हिंदी समझते हैं ना आप लोग? थैंक्स टू बॉलीवुड एवरीवन अंडरस्टैंड्स हिंदी. ओके, सो आपको डर लगता है कि अगर ये गलत तो नहीं बोल दे, वो क्या सोचेंगे अगर ये बोल दिया. Little realizing that I have yet to come across anybody on this earth. I have come across very senior, very prominent personalities who hasn't committed a mistake. Everyone commits a mistake. आपके संपर्क में has anybody come in contact with you who hasn't committed any mistake, who hasn't had failures in life? Everyone commits a mistake. Everyone has failures in life. I will give you my personal instance. I committed many mistakes. I had many failures in my life. Some of these mistakes and failures are outlined in my book. I was doing class 12 like you all. How many of you are in class 12? Class 11, 12? Wonderful. And you have all passed class 11. Okay. So you're sitting separately. Juniors and seniors. Okay. Did you rank them? You didn't. Okay. Right. So I had done my class 12. And I had taken science side. I was studying physics, chemistry and maths. And when you study science side, you can't focus on your language. So I could barely speak or write 5 sentences in English or Hindi. I could not. Now I can speak fluently both English and Hindi. But I couldn't then. So I started working on my language. I'll talk about it later on. And I became a debater for my university. So I used to go all over the country to debate on various issues. So there was this debating competition as a part of a larger cultural festival of IIT Kanpur. Have you heard of IIT Kanpur? It's a very good institute. So there was this huge function like this Shamiana, and there were 1,000 children sitting in front of me. So one day before the debating competition, there was a music competition also. So I thought I could sing also. आप लोग भी गाते होंगे सब लोग. Many of us are bathroom singers. I was slightly better than bathroom singer. So I thought I could participate in the music competition also. So I decided to participate in the competition. Next day, the first day of the competition, my name was announced. Everyone clapped. Mr. Anil Swarup has come. I started singing and I picked up the wrong note. Within 15 seconds, that 1,000 crowd booed me out of the auditorium. They just booed me out. Have you ever had that experience, any one of you? Has anybody booed you? So you do not know what happened to me. It was like being hit badly and I didn't know where to hide myself. As a consequence of which, I decided not to participate in the debating competition. Now, one of my seniors, he came to me and he said, "Kya ho gaya? What happened?" I said, "You saw what happened? They booed me out. How can I participate in the competition tomorrow?" He said, "You are committing 2 mistakes. First mistake you committed by participating in a competition without practice. You thought you were a bloody Tansen and you could go and sing. And obviously they booed you out. And the second mistake is, having committed that mistake, you are not participating in an event where you have practiced, where you are good." So after a long discussion for about 1 hour, he convinced me that you did commit a mistake. Don't ever commit that mistake again. Now this is a lesson here. Never commit the same mistake again. But committing a mistake, there is nothing wrong. You should not worry about committing mistakes, because if you start believing that everyone commits mistakes, it will give you enormous confidence to do things knowing fully well that there could be a mistake. But if you don't take a step forward, how will you travel? Sometimes you will fall. And the winners in life are those people who get up and move after falling. They understand the reason for their failure, their falling, and then they don't commit the same mistake again and they walk. So what happened next day, I finally decided that I will participate in the debating competition. So again the same crowd, 1,000 people. As soon as my name was announced, Anil Swarup, they started shouting, Gayak aa gaya, because they thought the same singer would have come and again will have some other taan. But I had overcome my fears. I spoke in that debating competition and I got the first prize in the national debating competition. Now this is very unusual. After having been totally blown off as a consequence of that booing by these 1,000 strong crowd, the same crowd appreciated what I was saying. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that you will commit mistakes in life. It's very natural for a human being to commit mistakes. If you don't move, then you won't fall. Then you will keep standing at one place. So you should be prepared to walk, you should be prepared to run, you should be prepared to fall. If you fall, you should try and understand why did you fall and then ensure that you don't fall the next time for the same reason. This is very important. It is not a question of not committing a mistake, it's a question of learning from your mistakes. Whether that mistake is a lesson to you. Many of us continue to commit the same mistake over and over again. If that be the case, then there is no chance that you will recover. So the suggestion to all of you is, don't be fearful about failure. Don't be fearful about committing mistakes. Everyone has done that. You must have heard the name of John F. Kennedy, the American president, you heard? The great human being. He committed one of the biggest blunders of his life, which is called the Bay of Pigs, where he raided Cuba and it ended in a total failure. Whether every big person, Winston Churchill failed on a number of occasions till finally as a prime minister he won the World War for Britain. But he failed many times before that. So every great person or every person of notice has failed in his life. In my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, I not only talk about successes, I talk about my failures. Many of them failures. I continue to fail, but the cause of the failure was different. And with every failure, I was becoming increasingly strong, so as not to commit the same mistake again that leads to a failure. So friends, keep this in your mind, that failure is a natural occurrence. Mistakes are a natural occurrence. There is nobody on this earth who hasn't failed, who hasn't committed a mistake. So your job should be not to stop because apprehending a failure, not to stop because of a fear of failure. Keep moving, fully aware that you might fall, you might fail. Have confidence in yourself that even if you fall, you'll wake up, you'll get up, and then you'll start moving. So this is point number 2. Don't be worried, don't be fearful of the mistakes that you commit. Number 3. We spend lots of time on issues over which we have absolutely no control. आप सोचते हैं ना कभी ऐसी चीज को, अब आप लोग में से क्रिकेट में कितने इंटरेस्टेड उधर बैठे होंगे, क्रिकेट के शौकीन, आपने देखा नहीं देखा कि धोनी ने ऐसा शॉट क्यों मार दिया वरना इंडिया जीत जाती है, लोग लड़ते हुए देखा मैंने। और आजकल तो बहुत चल रहा है कि लड़ाई दिल्ली में हो रही है, हम यहाँ भी लड़ाई कर रहे हैं, यूएस ने क्यों इराक पे। सो वी स्पेंड सो मच टाइम कि उस लड़की ने मेरे से ऐसा क्यों कह दिया, उसने ऐसा क्यों कह दिया मुझसे। देखिए एक बात समझ लीजिए, unless you decide to feel insulted, no one can insult you. If you don't feel insulted, no one can insult you. Let him say what he has to say. But we feel insulted. So our reactions are determined by what the others do to us. There are so many things in life over which you have no control. You are born to a set of parents. You had no control. You are born. There's so many things. There's no point in cursing them. I remember I used to get very agitated when I used to get stuck in a traffic jam. आप लोग कभी यहाँ ट्रैफिक में फंसते हैं कभी तो क्या महसूस होता है? निकल के मारे किसी को, मन करता है ना? मेरा बहुत मन करता था। अब तो बाल कम है मेरे, अपने बाल नोचता था मैं जब फंस जाते थे ट्रैफिक में। एक दिन ट्रैफिक में मेरी पत्नी, माय वाइफ वाज ट्रैवलिंग विद मी, अगेन वी गॉट स्टक इन अ ट्रैफिक जैम। सो आई गॉन वेरी वेरी एजिटेटेड, ये करते क्यों नहीं कुछ, इतना ट्रैफिक जाम है, इतना देर होती है. सो माई वाइफ आस्क्ड मी, शी आस्क्ड मी, इनका तुम कुछ कर सकते हो? मैंने कहा मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? अरे जब कुछ कर नहीं सकते उतना खून क्यों खिला रहे हो? Now this is a very critical point. See, the time is limited for everyone. We all have limited time. You can't say that I have this time, this time. Every child like you who comes to me, everyone who comes to me says, sir, time manage नहीं हो पाता. Why? Because we waste a lot of time on issues over which we have no control. In fact, we have 24 hours a day. If you sleep for 7 hours, you still have 17 hours. But you look at the time that you waste. और सबसे ज्यादा टाइम आजकल किस पे वेस्ट होता है? कितना टाइम वेस्ट. और हुआ क्या है आजकल? मदर्स डे, फादर्स डे, आज मैं देख रहा था ग्रैंडसन डे है आज. रोज कुछ ना कुछ डे लगाए रहते हैं और सब इसमें लगे रहते हैं. आई हैव ग्रैंड डॉटर्स हु आर नाउ 10 years of age, तो वो भी अपना फोन पे लगी रहती हैं. अब मैं कहता हूं आई कैन अफोर्ड टू डू दैट, आई हैव रिटायर्ड, बट यू ऑल कैन नॉट. आई टेल चिल्ड्रन टू गेट रिड ऑफ दिस एंड कीप इट विद देम फॉर ओनली 2 hours a day. किसी को दे दीजिए आप, फिर आपको देखिए कितना टाइम मिलता है. यू नो, आई विल कम बैक टू द टाइम मैनेजमेंट पार्ट, बिकॉज इन पर्सनैलिटी डेवलपमेंट टाइम मैनेजमेंट इज क्रिटिकल. Is critical. I'll come back to that. Let me complete the previous part. That you should not get worried over issues you have no control. You know, before I joined the IAS, I was in the police service. I was undergoing training at the National Police Academy. यहीं पर, हैदराबाद में ही. तो ये हैदराबाद नहीं है ये? अच्छा, ओके. मैं तो इसको हैदराबाद ही समझ रहा था. तो I was undergoing training there. So batchmate of mine who recently retired as Director General of Police, he walked up to me and asked me, बॉस रात को नींद नहीं आ रही. हमने क्या हो गया? बॉस पेट्रोलियम के दाम बहुत बढ़ रहे हैं. मैंने कहा पेट्रोलियम के दाम तो बढ़ रहे हैं, क्या तुम्हारे रात को ना सोने से कम हो जाएंगे? नहीं बॉस, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति पर कुप्रभाव पड़ रहा है, यानी कि द इकोनॉमी इज बीइंग इम्पैक्टेड. हमने कहा यार वो सब ठीक है, लेकिन तुम्हारे सोने से इसमें कोई अंतर नहीं पड़ने वाला, तो रात की नींद क्यों हराम कर रहे हो? बोले नहीं बॉस, बड़ा गंभीर समस्या है. हमने कहा समस्या गंभीर है, हमें चर्चा करनी चाहिए, लेकिन आप रात की नींद तो उन चीज के लिए हराम कीजिए जिसके लिए आप कुछ कर सकते हैं. Why are you so hassled about issues for which you have absolutely no control? At best you can say जो तुम स्कूटर चलाते हो चलाना बंद कर दो, पेट्रोल का कंजम्पशन थोड़ा कम हो जाएगा. But beyond it you can't do much. तो finally he agreed with me, he went away. He said okay, हाँ सही कह रहे हो यार, मेरे सोने से फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. चला गया. 3 महीने बाद फिर आए मेरे पास, कहता बॉस रात को नींद नहीं आ रही. हमने क्या हो गया यार, पेट्रोलियम के दाम तो अपने आप कम हो गए बिना तुम्हारे इंटरवेंशन के. बोले बॉस इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन बहुत बढ़ रही है. मैंने उससे कहा रात में सो जाओ यार, अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगी. सी द पॉइंट दैट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक हियर इज, फ्रेंड्स, यू मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड दिस वेरी क्लियरली, that there are number of issues over which you have absolutely no control. Don't waste your time on that. So I have told you not to waste your time on your past. I have told you not to waste your time on what you, then you will have a lot of time. Friends, you do not have any control over the past, is dead and gone. Future का किसी को पता नहीं है. वो सिर्फ पंडित जो देखता है ना हाथ, वो बता देगा क्या है फ्यूचर का. मैं तो नहीं विश्वास करता उनमें. लेकिन जब मैं कोल सेक्रेटरी बना, अब थोड़ा सा आई एम डाइग्रेसिंग बिट, व्हेन आई बिकेम कोल सेक्रेटरी, उस समय द सिचुएशन इन कोल वाज वेरी बैड. ऑल स्कैम्स, यू हैव हर्ड ऑफ कोल स्कैम, नो, ऑल दैट हैड ब्रोकन आउट. आई वाज आस्क्ड टू सॉर्ट इट आउट. So when I entered the room of Coal Secretary Government of India, so I was as if I was entering into a graveyard. CBI was after officers, CBI was after files. My predecessor, who was secretary due to retire, was sitting behind loads of files. तो मैं अपने इस मित्र, मेरा एक मित्र था जो हाथ देखता था, मैं विश्वास तो नहीं करता था, मैं चला गया. उसके बाद मैंने यार ये बताओ ये कहाँ मुसीबत में फंस गया, क्योंकि मैंने अपने दोस्त को एक फोन किया कि यार कोल सेक्टर कैसा है. उसने कहा गैंग्स ऑफ वासेपुर देखी है क्या, सॉर्ट आउट. I don't know whether you heard of Gangs of Wasseypur. Is a movie talking about coal mafias. So I went to my friend of mine. उसने हाथ देखा मेरा, कहता अगले 3 महीने आपके बड़े खराब है. Next 3 years, 3 months are bad. मैंने उसके बाद तो ठीक हो जाएगा. नहीं, उसके बाद आदत पड़ जाएगी. So the sooner you get used to it. Future पे you have future will be built by the bricks that you build now. So the only control, my friends, you have is only on now, the present. If you make the present appropriately, if you utilize every moment appropriately, your future will be built. Just dreaming about the future will not be built. So you have to try and build your present. Now, how do you build your present? You build your presence by again developing and using every moment that you have in a very constructive manner. If you do that, you can be rest assured that your future will be built. If you don't do that, then you will be in trouble. You will keep dreaming. You know, there are many people who only dream. And I keep telling them, until as you have your feet firmly on the ground, until as you build those bricks, your dream will never come true. In order to make your dream come true, now I'm coming to the next point of time management. This is very important because each one of you must be wondering कि 24 घंटे, only 24 hours. What do you do in 24 hours is too less. Actually, it is not. 24 hours is a lot of time in a day. It depends on how you spend your time. And let me touch upon some aspects of time management. First of all, at what time do you get up? All of you get up at 5 o'clock. Wonderful. That's the discipline here. Oh yeah, then I don't have to say much. You know, I used to get up late. I used to get up late in the morning. When I was in university, I didn't have people like them to tell me to get up early. So I used to get up late in the morning. Then for preparing for the IAS, I had taken law as a subject. Law. Law is a very difficult subject. I had not studied law. And in that, I had to learn about 700 case studies. 700 case studies. So how do you learn them? So I rang up again a friend of mine. यार कैसे याद करें? उसने कहा याद करने के लिए तो you'll have to get up early in the morning. हमने कहा you get up late in the morning. बोले you have to change your habit. Now this is important. Listen to this carefully. How do you change your habit? Whatever that habit is. In my case, my habit was that I used to wake up late in the morning. I had to get up early in the morning. So what did I do? If you associate the change of habit with something which you like, then you will change. Otherwise, you will not change. You will not change because I tell you to change. If you start liking what you have to change. Now, how did I do it? These days, of course, you have these T20 and one-day matches. In those days, in my time, it was only test cricket. Okay. So, Indian team had gone to Australia. And those who know cricket will understand that in Australia, test match used to start at 5:30 in the morning. I was passionate about cricket. I still am. So I used to listen to the commentary at 5:30 in the morning. And there were 5 test matches, and those days test matches lasted for 5 days. So I woke up at 5:30 in the morning for 25 days for 5 test matches. Even today I wake up at 6 o'clock. I got into that habit. Now, if you want to change your habit, since you already get up early in the morning, I don't have to tell you to do that. But if you want to change some other habit, you know, other girls and boys who don't get up early in the morning and have to get up early in the morning, I give a suggestion. Because you don't have people who discipline you to get up early in the morning. If you have the freedom, how do you do it? So I used to tell them, for boys, I used to tell them, get a girlfriend who wakes up at 5:30 and gives you a call, you will wake up. No? And vice versa. तब आप गाली भी नहीं देंगे. अरे तो बात करेंगे तुरंत उठा के. So you have to identify a methodology through which you can actually change your habit. That's very important. Now, if you can manage your time, if you plan your time, and I'm glad that they have a discipline here with regard to what time classes, you have to see what do you do during your spare time. That's the point where people do better than the other. Because rest of it, everyone goes to the class. Rest of it, everyone goes to eat. What do you do during your spare time? That's the time that your future will be dependent upon. So, for example, you all live here only, but in the evening, what do you do? Do you do something to develop your personality in terms of either reading or discussing? And when you discuss, what do you discuss? What do you talk? All this goes on to make your personality, because the future that you have, whether you have done your class 12 and you're about to do class 12, this is the time to develop certain faculties which will help you get a better job. Now, what are these faculties? There are 3 things that you should focus on. And you may already be doing it, but I'm just telling you, those that are not doing it should do it. There are 3 most important things for succeeding in an examination, whichever that examination is. Number 1, knowledge. Because if you don't have knowledge, you don't move further. Without knowledge, nothing. I don't have to say much about it because you are all conversant with knowledge. But very important as a part of the knowledge is also your comprehension skills. Now, what is a comprehension skills? Comprehension skill is your capability to understand what you read quickly. Now, some people read it twice, thrice, 4 times, and then they understand what is written. The others will read it only once or twice, they will understand it. That's comprehension. So I was suggesting while I was coming to this place that there are now tools available to improve your comprehension. You know, you will come across people, you don't have to tell things twice to them. First time you tell them, they will latch on to what you've told. That's developing your comprehensive skills. So acquiring knowledge will become easier if you have better comprehensive skills. You know, you don't have to read it again and again. You will find some amongst you who do not have to read for so many times for them to understand what is written in that page. But some of you would be reading over and over again and yet trying to understand. So you have to develop that comprehension skills. It can be done. There are tools available. I was mentioning to him, there are many institutes who are actually working on this aspect of developing comprehension skills among students. That is one. Number 2 is the analytical skills. So you have knowledge in your mind, you've understood it, but you are unable to analyze what you are saying. So you have to develop those analytical skills. Now this won't come easy, it is difficult. But since you are still in class 12 and you've just done class 12, you have 2, 3, 4 years for you to develop these skills, because this is the right time to develop analytical skills. One way of doing it, there are many other ways, is, as I suggest, I don't know whether you do it here, you must read the editorial articles of every newspaper, of one newspaper every day. 2, 3 articles are there. Spend time to read those articles. Why? Because those articles analyze a current issue. If you read those articles regularly, then the chances are that you will develop that skill yourself as to how do you understand, analyze what is written there. Not only that, by reading those editorial articles, I don't know whether you are told to read these articles, there are many, many benefits. Your knowledge will improve, your understanding will improve, your analytical skills will improve, and your communication skills will also improve, because these articles are written by people who have done well in life, who know how to write, who are very good in their expression, and hence when you read it regularly. I'm using the term regularly time and again because it's like medicine. If you don't do this regularly, then it won't happen. The third and perhaps the most important aspect for you to evolve as an individual to be reckoned with is improve your communication skills. Now, communication skills not only means why you speak, how you write, how you conduct yourself, what is your body language, all these are very important. One way of improving your communication skills, I'm suggesting, I don't know whether you're already doing it, I tried that and it worked wonders, and now I guide a lot of civil service aspirants, because these days I'm guiding a lot of persons who qualified for the interview and I'm guiding them. And one drill that I tell them, and which all of you can do, is pick up one of the editorial articles in a newspaper, stand in front of a mirror and read it aloud, slowly but loudly, every day without failure. One editorial article in front of a mirror, read it slowly but aloud, and record it in your idiot box. Why record it? Number 1, you will see what mistakes you are committing as you are speaking. Second, you will know what sort of improvement is already happening. Use this telephone to record that reading one article every day. After you have read the article, reading it out, keep the paper down and speak it out in your own words, slowly but loudly. Each word very clearly spoken. Now, it's very important for you to speak slowly and clearly so that every word comes out distinctly from your mouth. This is step number 2. Step number 3 is, after you've read it, after you've spoken it, write that down in your own words every day without failure. Now, this entire exercise will take around 45 minutes or an hour. It is worth spending 1 hour on this, because you will see such a phenomenal and remarkable change in your expression. that ultimately it will benefit in your life. I have seen many civil servants failing in their career because they were unable to articulate their views clearly. Clear articulation, clear expression, clear communication is actually a very important ingredient for success in life. Whether you join civil service, you join private sector, doesn't matter. People who are good communicators succeed in life. People who are not good communicators, very few succeed in life. But if you follow this drill, you would have succeeded. Now, I have taken a lot of time telling you on how you can become what you can become. Each one of you has enormous potential. Don't compete with others. This is another thing which I'd like to tell you. Don't compete with others. There is a simple reason. Each one of you is very different from the other. Never compete with others. In fact, you should try to learn from others. One is good in one thing, in writing, one may be in speaking, one may be in reading. Everyone is a different individual. Competition can kill you actually. But if you work on your own strengths, you can learn from others. We don't learn from others. We don't learn because if you are competing with her and she's competing with you, she will never tell you anything because you're competing with each other. But if you're learning from each other, each one of you will learn from each other. So, though I lived in a world and even today, everyone talks about competition and competition, I keep telling them, don't compete. Compete with yourself. Benchmark yourself that this is where I am and I'm improving myself. Don't benchmark yourself with somebody else, but learn from others. One more thing before I conclude and switch over to some of the instances is, whatever you do in life, now or hereafter, do for yourself, not for others. Why? Because in Delhi, I don't know about Hyderabad, I have yet to see anybody driving his own Mercedes car. A Mercedes car costs about 1 crore of rupees. No one. Driver drives it. And all the maza of driving a Mercedes car is of the driver. And the owner sits in the backside of the car, which is very uncomfortable. I've sat in a very lower seat. You don't know where to put your foot. But he buys a Mercedes car for 80 lakh, 1 crore for driver to drive it. Then why does he buy a Mercedes car? He buys it for his neighbor. He wants to impress his neighbor that he has a Mercedes car. Now this logic applies to everything. Your clothes, your spectacles, your shoes, everything. Pardon my saying so, I've seen ladies. Today also at the airport, I found a lady with 6-inch heel and she was barely able to walk, but she was walking with that because she was trying to impress somebody. We are all trying to impress others. Somehow anyhow. And that is a problem actually. Because it consumes your time and it doesn't give you anything. Let me tell you with my experience, nothing. When I was in college, many of my friends, those were the days of Amitabh Bachchan and Shatrughan Sinha. You would have heard these names, no? So someone, I thought I had a good voice. So I started wearing those bell bottoms and long hair. I thought I was looking at Amitabh Bachchan. Now I look at those photos, I like a bloody fool, no? And nowhere can I look like Amitabh Bachchan. I am what I am. Why should I look like Amitabh Bachchan? Many of my friends started smoking because in those days Shatrughan Sinha used to smoke in a particular manner, his style of smoking. They picked up smoking. What is this going on? If you are trying to impress people around you, you are not growing as an individual. Think over it. It's not easy, but think over it. How much time, effort, money that you waste on impressing others? Is your individuality defined by what others think of you or what you think of yourself? It's very difficult, but you think over it. Whether the clothes, and I keep repeating the term clothes, are you wearing, you should not be outlandish. But why should you buy very expensive clothes? I've never understood why people buy very expensive clothes. Because unless they wear the price tag, it's very difficult to make out what price it is, no? The clothes have to be comfortable. So we spend so much time. Shoes. I've never understood the reason why one is so expensive. How do you hide your shoes? Don't worry. I'm not commenting on your shoes. So it's good to have good, if you feel good about it, please buy those shoes. But most of the buying is done to impress others. And that is counterproductive. It doesn't help your personality. Your personality will be developed by what you are, not dependent on what you wear and how you wear. So think over it. I am telling you all this because I see very bright faces sitting here. You are the future of the nation. Whether you are focusing on to impress others or you're focusing on yourself to evolve as an individual, to be reckoned with. I I conclude my book Ethical Dilemmas by this couplet, which is primarily meant for officers but could apply anywhere. It says, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. Meaning thereby that evolve as an individual to be reckoned with, so that others may ask you, amongst yourself also, there would be some leaders who are visible. So if you have a problem, you go to that person. Why? Because he is evolved as a person to be reckoned with. For that, you don't have to wear an Amitabh Bachchan like bell bottom or long hair. You have to be person to be reckoned with, and that's very important. I don't know how much time do I have now. I can carry on, but what I would like to do is I would like to seek questions from them and then carry on, get into an interactive mode. Is that okay with you? Right. Okay. So I've spoken sufficiently. I think I will speak more because as I keep saying, walking is very difficult. Talking is very easy. So if you have to do work, it's very difficult. I can keep talking for another 24 hours. But I'd like to get into an interactive mode with you all. If you all have any questions in mind regarding what I've said so far, I'd like to respond to those questions. Let's get into a conversation. Is that okay with you? Is that fine? Right. So any questions, any observations from young men sitting there? You all came late, so I could not directly address you all. Any question? Is there another mic available? हाँ, इधर ले आइए. Any question? You can ask. Don't worry. They will not say anything. I've told them they will not comment on your questions. Ask them anything. They'll close their eyes and ears if you want. Ask me anything. Any question, any observation, your experience, anything? Speak up. मैं देखिए, मैं लगता हूँ थोड़ा डरावना, लेकिन मारता वारता किसी को नहीं हूँ, तो आप बिल्कुल चिंता ना कीजिए. कोई ask any question? Yes, friends, any question from your end? आपने बड़ा डरा के रखा था इन लोगों को. हाँ, yes.
Sir, it is a bit. This is not from your session, but I want to ask you.
Ask anything. Ask anything. मुझे आप कौन सा एग्जाम देना, नहीं आता होगा आंसर बता देंगे, नहीं आता है.
Sir, if you would have gone 20 years back or 30 years back, what would you ask that Anil Swarup sir? Like right now.
I would, if I go back 20 years in my life or 30 years back in my life, I would like to be the same Anil Swarup that I write in my book. I write in my book, not just a civil servant, and let me give you a bit of a background. I'll give you a bit of background. People ask me, how did you become an IAS officer? Why did you become an IAS officer? I became an IAS officer because my father wanted me to become an IAS officer. When I was 10 years of age, I saw a piece of paper. I didn't know anything about IAS. In that, my dad had worked out what will I do in BA, MA, what subjects I'll take. Of course, I followed a slightly different path, but I made his dream into my dream. This is very important. Though he wanted me to become an officer, I started dreaming of becoming an IAS officer. And the fabulous time that I spent in 37 years as the IAS officer, I feel there's no better service on the earth as the IAS. It's an amazing service. I enjoyed every moment of my existence as a civil servant. And that is why in the last chapter of my book, I write that if I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IAS officer. So 30 years ago, I'd like to be exactly what I am today. The reason is I take pride in whatever I did in the past 38 years. Yes, I did a few wrongs. I had a few failures, but that's human. And I loved every moment of my existence as a civil servant. Every moment. And I'm enjoying it now. Now people ask me, how's it going now? I say that it's better than those 38 years. Why? As a civil servant, you are bound by code of conduct. You are not so free as it were. Now I'm a free bird. I decide where I have to go. He invited me. I said, चलते हैं वहाँ पर. जहाँ मुझे अच्छा लगता है वहाँ जाते हैं. पहले जहाँ हम जाते थे उसको अच्छा लगने की कोशिश करते थे. अब हम वहाँ जाते हैं जहाँ हमें अच्छा लगता है. That's the difference. So I have the freedom to do that. Excellent question. Any other question? अबे ऐसे मजा आएगा. ऐसा कॉन्वर्सेशन होता है ना बातचीत में. आप लोग कुछ पूछेंगे नहीं तो फिर मैं अपना ही गाना गाता रहूंगा, वही राग. और डरिए नहीं, बिल्कुल पूछिए आप. देखिए कितना अच्छा क्वेश्चन उन्होंने पूछा. मैं अपनी किताब नहीं लाया, वरना मैं इनको एक भेंट कर देता अपनी किताब. Wonderful. What's your good name? Kashyap. You should be proud of this moment because 30 years down the line, you should say the same thing. Proud of it. Yeah. Yes.
Sir, this is my personal problem, so I want a solution for that problem. Actually, I does very well in all of my subjects except maths. That is not because of the faculty or their explanation.
अरे डरिए नहीं, बिल्कुल डरिए, कुछ नहीं करेंगे आप.
Though I practice so well, I couldn't present it so well in my examination. So I want some solution to get rid of this kind of fear. And
Okay, let me explain this to you. And this is again a very good question. You know, in your life, in your career, in your attempts, everything will not be fine. किसका होता है सब कुछ fine? So you should take it as a normal occurrence. It is nothing unusual. It will happen not only now, it will happen later on. I'll give you an example again from my own life because I face these things in my life. When in classes, the years that I didn't came first in the class, I used to feel terrible कि दुनिया पूरी गड़बड़ हो गई है. Later on realize किया इसका मतलब ही नहीं है कोई. आप मैथ्स में नहीं कर पाए उसको मतलब नहीं है, मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको. It will have no bearing on your, but it will unnecessarily keep you worried. What you should ask yourself is, did I try my best? That's it. That's the final question you have to answer to yourself, not to the lady sitting next to you, not to her. उनको सोचने दीजिए, भाड़ में जाए वो. आपको देखिए ऐसा, why am I saying that? Because अपने आप से आदमी झूठ नहीं बोलता. You ask yourself, did you give it your best? If you did it your best, good enough. And then you start analyzing, अगर नहीं हुआ तो क्यों नहीं हुआ? दूसरा, it may be that you don't have an aptitude for mathematics. It's very good. What's wrong in it? You don't have an aptitude, so be it. क्या बिना मैथ्स के लोग जीवित नहीं रहते? खूब अच्छा जीवन में गुजारते हैं भाई. कोई हल्का गणित का विशेषज्ञ तो होता नहीं. So don't worry about it. मैथ्स नहीं है तो नहीं, और चीज में करिएगा. अब तो इतने ऑप्शंस, हमारे टाइम पे तो नहीं थे ऑप्शंस. अब तो बहुत ऑप्शंस हैं. Why are you worried about it? First thing, don't worry about it. You worrying about worrying is worrying. Don't worry about it. Take it in your stride. So long as you've done. You yourself say, sir, बाकी सब में तो अच्छा हो गया. Very good. Pat yourself on the back. इसमें भी कोशिश करेंगे. Don't get too hassled about small things. ये होता रहता है. आप फिर कोशिश कीजिए. In this country, we say कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन, but we don't believe in it. We should focus on the karma. Why? Because no one has any control over results. Let me tell you, I have had sufficient experience to say it with conviction. Let me give you instances from my own life. Why you should not bother about this. See, I was posted as sub-divisional magistrate in the initial year in a place called Hardoi. It's a district in UP. So sub-divisional magistrate is below the collector. It's called the sub-collector here, where we called the sub-divisional magistrate. As luck would have it, Mrs. Indira Gandhi was assassinated. Okay, all hell broke loose. You know, people from the ruling party were burning the shops, indulging in arson and looting with regard to certain minority community. So my job was to keep the law and order in position. So I used to go around the city, ensure that everything is fine. Then I heard that one of the most powerful MLA of that district was behind these looting and arson. I got this intelligence. Now the dilemma that I faced, since I was supposed to speak on dilemma today, dilemma was whether I should initiate action against this powerful MLA. Okay. There was nobody to guide me. I had to take a call myself. So I decided I'll go ahead. So I made out a case against the MLA and sent it to my boss, the district magistrate, the collector. This MLA got the wind of it. He got to know that I had the courage, because no one had the courage even to speak to him. I sent a case against him. So he went to Lucknow, which is the state headquarters, and he spoke to somebody, and I was summoned to Lucknow. आप देखिए क्या हो रहा है. मैंने सिर्फ रिपोर्ट भेजी थी. So वहाँ पहुँचे my officer. When I entered his room, he said, अनिल तुमने ये क्या कर दिया? तो मैंने बताया उनको. बोले हाँ किया तो ठीक है, लेकिन तुम फाइल वापस ले लो. No, ठीक किया, फाइल वापस ले लो. How do you do that? I said, sir, फाइल तो भेज दी मैंने. DM can reject my proposal. नहीं ये तुम्हारे हित में. It's in your own interest that you should take the file back. So I said, वो तो तीर है सर, निकल गया, वापस कहाँ लेंगे? Matter ended. I came back to my district. Within 24 hours, I was transferred out. No, I had done what I had done. And this was a punishment, so to say, at that point in time, that was given to me for doing which was right. Even he felt it was right, but I was transferred. I felt absolutely distraught. Okay. 9 years down the line, I became a district magistrate myself. Okay. And this Ram Janmabhoomi agitation was going on. I had developed that reputation that he's a very strict man, irrespective of political party, he'll put behind the bars if anyone does anything wrong. So my district was absolutely fine. Other districts, there was curfew. I didn't have to impose curfew. But as luck would have it, a murder took place. And the district president of the ruling party wanted to take out a funeral procession. Janaza nikalna cha rahe the. It was a recipe for disaster. Had they taken out that funeral procession, there would have been communal riots. So I tried to reason out with him. I tried to tell him, but he said, "नहीं, हम तो निकालेंगे." अब देखिए आप, no one can dare to do that. I put him behind the bars. I put the district president of the ruling party behind the bars. In the night at 11 o'clock, the chief minister rang me up. He said, "DM साहब आपने क्या कर दिया?" I said, "सर ये बैकग्राउंड है." नहीं, उसको छोड़ने का कैसे बताइए, कैसे छोड़े? मेरे साथ छोड़ना उचित नहीं होगा, क्योंकि अगर फ्यूनरल प्रोसेशन निकालेंगे तो सरकार आपकी है, कम्युनल राइट हो जाएगा। नहीं, कोई तरीका बताइए। तो मैंने कहा, साहब ऐसा कीजिए, आप बात कर लीजिए उनसे, उनको समझाइए कि उन्हीं की सरकार है, आप क्यों फ्यूनरल प्रोसेशन निकाल रहे हैं? सो ही बैंग द फोन डाउन. सो आई टोल्ड माई वाइफ, पिछली बार तो खाली ट्रांसफर होगा, तब की बार सस्पेंशन होगा. Next day, I get a call telling me that that person has agreed not to take out a funeral procession. I don't know what happened. Probably the chief minister spoke to him, someone. So I released him. I didn't have anything personal against him. Now what happens? 3 months down the line, the same chief minister who was so annoyed with me gave me an award for the finest district magistrate in the state. Now, both instances I'm comparing before you, because in one instance I was transferred out, in another instance I was rewarded. I did my duty in one case, this thing happened. In another case, another thing happened. So it keeps changing. You don't know what is going to happen. You do your job. You feel satisfied what you're doing is correct. If you get into that habit, you will feel happy in life. That's what that matters. It does nothing other matters. If you internally felt that you did your bit in maths, good enough. You didn't get marks, okay. Let's try and find out why I didn't. I'll improve upon it. But don't feel bad about it. Don't feel down and out. Keep smiling. Okay? Wonderful. Any other question? What's your good name? You didn't tell me your name. Neha. Yes.
Good evening, sir. Last year, we were given a project work by the management, which included a case study from your book, Ethical Dilemmas of an IAS Officer.
Okay.
And that case study was about a drug addict who works in the cooperative bank. As you had the habit of going early to the office and preparing for the day, he came early to meet you and explained his story. And as he was a drug addict and did a correct practice, he was suspended then. And later he met you and he pleaded you to reinstate him into the job. And we want to know, what did you do then?
Okay, let me give you this instance because it's very close to my heart. This thing, I was young in the service. I still like to believe that I am young, which I am not. But at that point in time, I was indeed young. Didn't have much of an experience. So I had this habit, as he says, of going early in the office. Everywhere. I used to go half an hour before the usual time. The idea was to work, do some solid work, because during the day, there were many people who came to meet me. On this particular day, this was the month of May, very hot in Lucknow. There was this boy who walks into my room, because there's nobody there, so he just walks into my room. And he tells me, "Sir, aapse 2 minute baat karni hai." I looked at him, I was a bit annoyed. I said, I thought I would work here, but I said, okay, sit down. Then he narrates a very interesting story to me. He tells me, "Sir, I used to work as a manager in District Cooperative Bank and I became a drug addict. And at some point in time, I didn't have money, so I stole it from the bank. I was caught, I was suspended, I was removed from service. And then I was also jailed. Sir, I've completed my tenure in the jail. Now I want you to reinstate me." I said, "क्या मजाक कर रहे हो यार, तुम खुद ही कह रहे हो, पकड़े गए, अंदर गए जेल में, अब कैसे रख लेंगे?" बोले, "Sir," then what he tells me, that touched me. He said, "I have paid a lot of price for being a drug addict. Then he extended his left hand in which he was wearing a glove. He peels off his glove to show me that hand is not his hand, it's an artificial hand. And he says, sir, since I was a drug addict and I used to puncture needles here, it developed gangrene and it had to be chopped off. Sir, I have paid a price. I have lost a hand. I have done my bit in the jail. I want to restart my life. And then he said, with a very straight face, he tells me, sir, if I don't get this job, I'll end my life. There's nothing else left for me in life. No, I don't know. I believed him. So I asked him to write a note, write an application. He wrote an application. As he was writing the application, I rang up the general manager of that bank, and I was looking after that bank overall in the state. I asked about the background of this gentleman. He verified every word that he said. He said he's right, he was kicked out, but everyone tells that he's improved, he stopped taking drugs, he's trying to rebuild his life. I don't know what came to my mind. I wrote out a note myself, took to my boss who looked at me, he said, "Kya kar rahe ho tum?" I told him, sir, he will otherwise die. The boss signed the file. He was revived. He continued to work in that bank. And I remember I have a daughter who had some teeth problems, so I used to go to a doctor, a dentist. He used to attend to her. And when the procedure was over, I asked the doctor, sir, Dr. Saab, how much should I pay you? He tells me, sir, aapse nahi lenge. I said, why? Why won't you take it? He said, you are not aware. My brother would have committed suicide, but for your intervention and reinstating him. So I call these my Bharat Ratnas, that it comes back to you. If you do some good to somebody, it comes back to you. So in short, that is the story. It is longer story in the book, but I made it short for you all. तो नेहा जैसी बहादुर और लड़कियां नहीं है यहाँ पर. देखिए, she had the courage to stand up, से कि मेरी ये प्रॉब्लम है. नो, अगर देखिए ऐसा ना कि चोट लगती है ना आपके, तो अगर आप उसको छुपा लीजिए, जैसे ना पिंपल पे आपने कुछ लगा दिया, उसको एक्सपोज कीजिए, चोट को एक्सपोज कीजिए तो ठीक हो जाएगी. जितना सनलाइट पड़ेगी वो जल्दी ठीक होगी. छुपाएंगे तो चोट और गंभीर हो जाएगी. Anybody? Another question? Yes. Now that there's nobody, you might as well ask another one.
Ethical dilemmas. Like,
okay, let me tell you the rationale for writing all the 4 books one by one. Okay.
And
the first book I wrote was not just a civil servant. And this book I wrote because during the service, I used to read a lot. I used to read 100 books a year. I used to read a lot. So I used to think I didn't have too many desires in life. One desire was I should have one of my own book in my name. That was my desire. So I started writing this book, not just a civil servant, while in service. And it took me 8 years to complete that book because it was published only after I retired. When that book was published, it was received very well and I enjoyed writing that. Around that time, I used to go to the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration. You've heard about it? Where IAS officers are trained. I used to go there 5 times a year. I used to talk to those officers of all seniorities. And I discovered that as the officer became senior, he became more and more cynical. He thought nothing can be done. He used to blame the surroundings and everybody. And then I realized that I must write a book to demonstrate that even in the current set of circumstances, you can do a lot of work. And that prompted me to write Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. It could have easily been titled Making Things Happen in the Government. Despite everything, you can actually do a lot of things, and many officers have done that. That prompted me to write Ethical Dilemmas. The third book that I wrote was No More a Civil Servant. There is a personal aspect to No More a Civil Servant. This is about my life after retirement. I had no intention of writing a third book, but I was down with 3rd/4th grade cancer in 2021, where I could barely sit or move. It was lymphoma spread through my body. So lying in the bed, I used to take my laptop and started writing this book. 1 page a day, 2 pages a day, 3 pages a day, sometimes 5 pages a day, as I could do. By the time my disease was cured, this book was ready. And in came No More a Civil Servant, about my retired life. It also has the chapter on my recovery from cancer. Because I and my wife were convinced that if I have to go, I will go, but I'll go firing on all cylinders. Continue to do what I'm doing without any failure. So to the outside world, I was absolutely fine. Since fortunately, unfortunately, that was COVID time. In any case, we were not meeting anybody physically. So I used to communicate with everyone on virtual mode. And I wrote this book. The fourth book has a very interesting take. The fourth book was written, which is called Encounters as Politician. It is basically to dispel the misapprehension that we have that all ills in the society is on account of politicians. I'm not trying to defend politicians. What I'm trying to say is politician is a part of our society. So there are as many good, bad, ugly politicians as anybody else. And politicians have their own limitations. So my take on that book is, I have, I think, about 90 politicians that I came across during my career. I've written about them. They are absolutely personal experience, no hearsay, not what I have read or seen, no. What I experienced myself with these 90 politicians, the prime ministers, presidents, other chief ministers I worked with. I had the occasion to be special secretary to Mr. Kalyan Singh, chief minister of UP, then secretary to Mr. Kalyan Singh, then special secretary to Mayawati, who was chief minister of UP. I worked very closely in Jharkhand with the chief minister there, Mr. Raghubar Das. I had Mr. Dr. Manmohan Singh picked me up for the cabinet secretariat job. Mr. Modi picked me up to become the coal secretary. So all these from all walks. And I keep telling everyone, if you act like a professional, and I believed in being a professional. In 38 years of my career, I never ever went to any politician for any favor whatsoever. Never. I worked on my own terms. So this is the background why I wrote these 4 books. And if you all find time to read them.
AS officer.
Take this one.
Good evening, sir. What was your best experience as an IAS officer?
I had amazing experience, as I said, but one I can't forget. I was doing a scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, which has now morphed into Ayushman Bharat. It's one of the finest schemes in the world. So when we started implementing this scheme, there was a lot of problems, but then it came to be recognized world over as one of the finest schemes. One of the finest schemes. ILO awarded me. World Bank wanted me to do this scheme in 15 countries of the world. So it came to be recognized world over. When Mr. Barack Obama became president of the US, one of his advisors rang me up and he said, Mr. Swarup, can you come over to the US and make a presentation on your scheme? Because we are struggling with our health insurance scheme. Probably we can learn a bit from yours. So I said, our scheme is totally different, has no relevance for the US, so there's no point in my coming there. But he insisted. So in one of the visits to Washington, and I'm going there again this week itself, in one of the visits to Washington, I went to Brookings Institute, where I made a presentation on RSBY, Swasthya Bima Yojana. And during this presentation, there were representatives of the US government, of the state governments, our own mission people. Then there were also representatives of Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation. Have you heard of these? Gates Foundation gives money to poor countries. A lot of money they give. So after my presentation, I was having a cup of coffee. This gentleman from Gates Foundation walks up to me and asks me, sir, you are very passionate about this scheme. Is the government giving you anything beyond your salary? This is a very interesting question. Every government servant gets the same salary, but some are passionate, some are not. So I asked him a counter question. I asked him, Gates Foundation gives millions of dollars to poor countries. What do you get out of it? He said, well, that's a job. But more than that, we derive a lot of satisfaction out of helping the poorest of the poor. I said, you've answered your own question. The Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana is meant for the poorest of the poor, many of whom would have been dead but for this scheme. So the good wishes of those that survived and their family members come back to me somehow, anyhow. That's good enough a kick for me to do what I am doing. So that's the kick that I talked. And then I narrated an incident to him to illustrate what I meant by kick. In this scheme, I used to go to small hospitals which were empaneled, So one day I went to a small hospital and I heard a very feeble voice from behind. I was talking to a patient, very feeble voice. And the call was Beta idhar aao. I turned around and saw a very old lady who could not sit. She was so old and so frail that she couldn't sit. So she was calling me Beta idhar aao. Someone had told her that I had something to do with this scheme, RSBY. So I went to her. I asked her, Mata ji, aap theek to hain? She tells me, बेटा मैं बहुत तकलीफ में हूँ, लेकिन इन अस्पताल वालों ने मेरा बड़ा ख्याल रखा है. Then I said, फिर तो आप ठीक हो जाएंगे, अपने घर जाएंगे. नहीं नहीं बेटा, मेरा कोई घर वर नहीं है. मैं तो झोपड़ी में रहती थी. मैं बीमार पड़ गई, मेरा पड़ोसी था, वो भी भीख मांगता है, वो उसने तुम्हारा एक कार्ड देखा और वो मुझे इस अस्पताल में ले आया. यहाँ सब मेरी सेवा कर रहे हैं, मुझसे पैसे भी नहीं मांगते, मेरे पास हैं भी नहीं देने को पैसे. तो नहीं टोल्ड मैडम, माता जी आपको पैसे देने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप ठीक होके घर जाएंगी. नहीं नहीं बेटा, मेरा तो भाई है ना बेटा, मेरे दुनिया में कोई नहीं है, अब तो मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊंगी. ये 10 सेकंड बहस चलती रही. देन शी मेक अ रिमार्केबल स्टेटमेंट. शी सेज, ऊपर वाले जाके एक बार जरूर कहूंगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है. These are things, as I said, I call them my Bharat Ratnas. Getting blessings from a lady on a deathbed who doesn't know me, I don't know her, you feel blessed. So this was probably the best moment of my life when they gave me. So if there are no more questions, we can conclude, and or else if you want me to say something else, I can, as I said, I can keep talking. For me, talking is not a tough thing. But I would have loved to have more questions from you all, because then you can relate to my answers. Otherwise, I'm...
Sir, most astonishing thing is when his mic is not working, you are moving forward and giving your mic, sir. Such a humility is highly appreciated. And it is never expected from a person from cabinet secretary level coming to such a down-to-earth personality, worked under honorable prime ministers of this country, right? This is the biggest personality trait that is exposed in front of everybody. So we are just like at the age of grandchildren. Under your experience, we are 500 years ago actually. But you are coming forward and giving that mic to him is a really astonishing thing for everybody, sir. Such a humility has to be respected, and we bow our head down to you. And thank you so much for this exceptional personality in front of us. See, not only a person called from the prime ministers who are re-elected, but also the president of USA, who were also into such a priority list. Such a wonderful personality, even during the corona time and when suffering from that cancer, sir still was not empty and writing a book. It is amazing thing, sir. From your side, we have no words, and we are not eligible to talk about you actually. We don't deserve much in front of you actually.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. I keep traveling quite a. People ask me, where do you live? So I tell them, technically I live in Noida, but I travel for 25 days a month. And I go to meet people like you. Why? The reason is very simple. With youngsters like you, I get a lot of energy. When you go old, you have to derive energy from elsewhere. So when you people talk, ask questions, I feel energized, and makes me feel younger than what I am actually. So it's a pleasure being amongst you all. I'm thankful to you for inviting me here. I've enjoyed. I can't forget Neha. I can't forget the gentleman there, Deepak. What wonderful questions you asked. I wish I had brought a few books with me. I could have given you those books, but after this, I'll take your address and get a book mailed to at least the two of you.
Actually, there are 60 students who participated and selected as one award.
Okay. Is it possible to give these two persons also an additional book?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have hundreds of books of you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
These will be distributed to those students who are
No, I'm only asking for the two wonderful questions that came. If two additional books could be given to them.
Bring those books immediately.